danger of this story lies entirely in the terrifying power of absolute isolation to weaponize your own grief against you until your mind completely breaks. My assignment began on a jagged rock 20 miles off the coast, where I took a job as a lighthouse keeper to escape the painful reminders of the car accident that killed my husband and daughter. The first week consisted of routine maintenance tasks, like checking the massive diesel generator, polishing the giant glass lenses, and logging weather data every 6 hours. By the third week, the relentless roar of the ocean waves began to sound like distant human voices calling my name from the base of the stone tower. I found myself spending hours staring at the black water, convinced that the rhythmic crashing against the rocks was actually a rhythmic Morse code from my deceased family. The radio stopped working during the second month due to a severe salt corrosion issue, cutting off my only verbal link to the mainland grid. I started setting 2 extra plates at the small kitchen table every single night, physically serving food that would simply sit there and rot until the morning. One night, I woke up to find myself standing on the narrow outdoor railing of the lantern room in freezing rain, without any memory of climbing the stairs. I began to hoard the emergency fuel supply in the living quarters because I became convinced that the ocean was actively trying to freeze my blood. The walls of the stone tower seemed to sweat with thick moisture, and I spent entire days scraping the mortar with my bare fingernails until they bled. I recorded daily logs on the walls using charcoal from the stove, documenting every single wave that hit the rock as if they were deliberate attacks. By the 4th month, my reflection in the glass looked like a complete stranger with hollow eyes and decaying skin. Yet, I could not stop staring at it for hours. The silence inside the structure became so heavy that the sound of my own heartbeat echoed like footsteps chasing me up the spiral staircase. I stopped changing my clothes and refused to sleep in the bed, choosing instead to curl up on the cold floor directly beneath the rotating light mechanism. Every time the beam of light passed over the dark water, I saw vivid shapes of my daughter floating just beneath the surface, waving her hands for help. I began to talk out loud to the empty corners of the rooms, answering questions that nobody had asked and screaming at the walls to stop closing in on me. The constant dampness caused a severe rash across my arms, but I welcomed the physical pain because it was the only thing that kept me awake. I deliberately smashed the remaining canned goods with a hammer because I believed the food was secretly listening to my thoughts. My mind completely rejected the reality of the mainland, and I became entirely convinced that the rest of the human race had perished in a global cataclysm, leaving me as the final survivor on Earth. The 5th month brought a massive Category 4 storm that battered the stone structure with 70-foot waves and shattered the lower kitchen windows completely. With the lower floor flooded with freezing salt water, I dragged my mattress up to the very top platform, right next to the high voltage electrical grid. The generator began to sputter and fail due to the intense wind blocking the exhaust pipes, causing the main beacon to flicker violently against the black sky. I watched the light die completely at midnight, plunging the entire ocean and the tower into a suffocating, absolute darkness that shattered my remaining sanity. Instead of running down to fix the machinery, I sat in the dark and felt an overwhelming sense of relief that the fake world had finally disappeared. The voices of my husband and daughter grew incredibly loud, echoing from the crashing waves below and demanding that I join them in their watery grave. I tore off my heavy winter coat and threw my shoes into the rising water below, fully embracing the freezing air as a sign of my fast approaching release. I took the remaining logs and threw them into the sea, destroying any evidence that I had ever existed on this lonely rock. My hands shook violently as I unlatched the heavy iron door leading out to the open, storm-swept balcony, where the wind nearly blew me off my feet. I crawled on my hands and knees across the wet metal grating, feeling the freezing spray blind my eyes while the ocean screamed my name. Looking down into the black abyss, I saw the faces of my family perfectly illuminated by the white foam of the breaking waves. The realization that I was completely alone in a dead universe made the choice remarkably easy, removing every ounce of fear from my broken mind. I stood up on the slippery edge of the stone parapet, feeling the wind push against my back like a gentle hand guiding me forward. There was no hesitation left in my body as I looked at the dark water one last time, fully believing that stepping off was the only way to hold my child again. I leaned forward into the empty air, leaving behind the dark tower and the broken mind that had tortured me for months. One last question: if you were in her place at that moment, would you have done the same? Be honest. What does her choice deserve out of 10? Subscribe now. The best story is coming next.